Iran called the ceasefire agreement a total defeat for the United States of America. Donald Trump threatens to break off negotiations and return to war if the Hormuz Strait actually has a toll imposed on it. Marco Rubio went on a tour of the monarchies of the Persian Gulf to convince them that the deal with Iran is indeed a victory for the United States of America. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu shocked everyone with his admission about how the war against Iran began. He stated that he simply presented Donald Trump with a fait accompli and Trump obediently agreed to support Israel in the war. At the same time, Israeli Defense Minister Yisrael Katz stated directly that Israel will not withdraw its troops from Lebanon even if the United States demands it. Although this is one of the conditions of Trump's peace deal with Iran. As a result, Donald Trump's allies in the Persian Gulf fear that his agreement with Iran will become a catastrophic turning point. And now Marco Rubio is trying to convince the monarchies that everything is under control. Although Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates can clearly see how Iran is negotiating with Oman about how they will once again block the Strait of Hormuz together and charge money for every ship passing through. And although Donald Trump assures that this will never happen, Iran is preparing a mechanism for implementation. And the countries of the Persian Gulf no longer believe in US protection because Iran has preserved both its missile program and all its proxy forces. And on top of that, it is getting sanctions lifted and all its assets unfrozen. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss all this together now, figure everything out and break it down. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and leave your comment under this video. So the agreement between the US and Iran is falling apart. The key Iranian negotiator, Mohammad Bakr Ghalibaf, called the US-Iran Framework Agreement a declaration of defeat for the United States of America. And Donald Trump warned that he would immediately stop any negotiations with Iran if rumors about Tehran's plans to levy fees on ships passing through the Hormuz Strait are confirmed. But Ghalibaf's statement sounds ominous in light of Iran's ties with Russia and China. Next is a quote from Ghalibaf. The Islamabad agreements between Iran and the US were not the result of pressure and coercion, but the consequence of the resistance and strength of the brave Iranian people. The era of imposing one's will on independent nations is over. His statement came amid ongoing technical consultations within the framework of the 60-day agreement. Iranian and American negotiators still disagree on key unresolved issues, primarily regarding the future of the Hormuz Strait and the nuclear inspection regime in Iran. Although, let me remind you, before Donald Trump's war against Iran, the issue of the Hormuz Strait did not exist at all. It simply wasn't there. The Hormuz Strait was open, and there wasn't even any discussion about whether fees would be charged. US President Donald Trump did not remain silent. And in response to Ghalibaf's statement, he said that Tehran assured Washington that there would be none for ships passing through the Hormuz Strait. Further, I quote, "No fees, no insurance payments, and no other charges of any kind. I am warning you." He stated that if this turns out to be untrue, the negotiations will be immediately terminated. Trump also said that the unfrozen Iranian assets will be spent, mind you, exclusively on importing food from the United States of America. Next, I will quote Trump. The funds and/or sanctions that the U.S. Department of the Treasury will unblock will be used exclusively for the purchase of food and medicine, and exclusively in the United States, including corn, wheat, and soybeans from our great American farmers. Sounds nice, doesn't it? But the spokesperson for the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Esmail Baghai, rejected this condition. Here is his quote. As for the released Iranian assets, decisions regarding them will be made in the way that best serves Iran's interests. Regarding the purchase of goods, our Ministry of Agriculture and other competent authorities will base their decisions on price and quality. Therefore, there are no restrictions in this regard. And after that, Donald Trump, as if he hadn't talked about some kind of exclusivity, claims that he was somewhat misunderstood. He says that out of the billions and billions of unfrozen assets, he expects Iran to spend about $500 billion on American goods. 1. So, that is, maybe we misunderstand the word exclusively. I mean, earlier I gave you a quote. It says exclusively on American goods. Now he says, well, not exclusively, of course. We'll unfreeze several tens of billions of dollars there, and out of that, well, about 500 million the Iranians will spend on American goods. Maybe, or maybe not. Meanwhile, the situation with the passage of cargo ships through the Strait of Hormuz remains not completely clear. At the moment, ships are indeed passing through the strait, but the question is what will happen next? And here's the funny thing that Donald Trump's supporters don't want to admit. Well, most likely there will still be a fee for ships to pass. The question is what form it will take. And even Trump himself hinted at this. Quote, for 60 days during the ceasefire in the Strait of Hormuz, there definitely won't be any fees. And there won't be any after those 60 days either, unless they are introduced by the United States of America and for its benefit. Here, Trump is being deceptive, because in the Memorandum of Understanding, it is clearly stated that Iran will not charge a fee for ships passing through the Hormuz Strait only for 60 days, for the duration of this ceasefire. After that, Ghalibaf himself made a statement to the state media for the government that the Hormuz Strait, quote, will never return to pre-war conditions and that Iran will maintain control over this waterway. Here's where it gets interesting. Iran and Oman have issued a joint statement saying that they are working on an agreement for joint management of the Hormuz Strait, as well as, quote, the services provided in this regard and the related expenses in accordance with international standards. The point is that Iran and Oman have publicly declared their sovereignty over the territorial waters in the Hormuz Strait for the first time. And they are hinting that since this strait belongs to these two countries, they will now be the ones to decide what happens with this strait next, how much passage will cost, and so on. Obviously, such conditions put a lot of pressure on the countries of the Persian Gulf. And against this backdrop, the United States Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, went on a tour of the monarchies of the Persian Gulf in order to convince them that everything is under control, and that in fact they will be able to continue selling their oil and gas easily. Speaking in Abu Dhabi, Rubio stated, quote, this is an international maritime route. No country is allowed to charge duties or fees on an international waterway. As for the nuclear program, by the way, there is absolutely no progress here either. Trump stated that Iran has fully agreed to nuclear inspections. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi strongly denied this, and here is his quote. There are no plans for access to the facilities that were attacked or to the nuclear materials. These issues will only be considered within the framework of a final agreement and depending on the specific steps taken by the other side, that is, the United States of America, regarding the complete lifting of all sanctions. That is, do you understand? Iran is clearly setting conditions. It says, Donald Trump, you started this war so that we wouldn't have a nuclear program. Well then, we'll discuss this issue later. Not now. Definitely not now. First, lift all the sanctions, set up, as you already promised, an investment fund of $300 billion, unfreeze all assets, and then we'll talk with you about what will happen next with the nuclear program. The ongoing war between Israel and the Lebanese movement Hezbollah. Iranian allies also remain one of the unresolved problems. Tehran insists that ending hostilities in Lebanon is a key condition for reaching a final agreement with the US, whereas the current framework agreement covers, as it explicitly states, all fronts, including Lebanon. Israel, which did not participate in the agreement, rejects this interpretation and says, listen, the war between the US and Iran is your business. The war between Israel and Lebanon is our business, so don't mix up these two issues. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar, speaking at an international conference in Tel Aviv on Wednesday, stated that since March, Hezbollah has launched more than 7,000 rockets, missiles, and drones at Israel. Therefore, Israel is not going to tolerate this. Israeli Defense Minister Yisrael Katz stated that his country does not intend to leave the security zone in southern Lebanon, despite possible demands from the US or other international partners. He said directly, listen, we don't care about any agreements made by Trump. We are not going to withdraw Israeli troops from the southern part of Lebanon, no matter what Donald Trump demands or how much he stomps his foot. Katz insists that the security zone established in southern Lebanon is critically important for ensuring national security of Israel, and he says no one is going to change that. Moreover, Katz clearly confirmed that Israel is not going to allow even the Lebanese civilian population to return to these regions where the buffer zone has now been established. And against the backdrop of such disagreements, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio went on a tour of the Persian Gulf countries to somehow convince the monarchies that, listen, you just don't understand. The United States of America has won. Trump forced Iran to capitulate. It sounds wild and strange to you, but now I'm going to convince you why that's the case. It is reported that the leaders of the Arab countries are concerned that Washington's concessions may be excessive, and they fear unfavorable changes in the regional balance of power and oil flows. Why is that? Let's break it down now. Look, let's start with regional security. Absolutely all of Iran's proxy forces, such as Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and the resistance in Iraq, all of them have remained untouched. Iran will continue to support them, and in the framework agreement with the United States of America, there is not a single word about all these militants, not a single word at all. Although for the Gulf countries and for Israel, this is a huge problem, and they hoped that if Trump started a big war, this problem would be solved, and terrorists in different parts of the Middle East would not be financed by Tehran. But now Iran will have even more money to support these proxy forces, because the US lifted all sanctions on the sale of Iranian oil and also unfroze billions of dollars of Iranian assets. And when the Iranian oil trade is fully reopened, you understand that this is dangerous. It's absolutely not in the interest of the Persian Gulf countries, because it takes away certain volumes from them. And now the Arab countries are asking themselves, what was that all about? As a result of the war, well, listen, Iran comes out as the real big winner, while the US and their partners in the region find themselves in a very strange position. Friends, I'll pause here for a moment to ask you to support the work of this YouTube channel by subscribing and liking, and with your comment, and also subscribe to my Telegram channel Pechiy News. The link is in the description of this video. There we post breaking news as it comes in. Also, join us on Patreon, where we have a closed community called Pechiy Insight. There, together with you, we discuss topics that don't appear here on YouTube. There, I answer all your questions, and we can discuss absolutely any topics, and we also plan to hold such closed events there. Exclusive streams where it will be just me and the Patreon subscribers, and there we will discuss various topics, and I will answer all the questions you're interested in. Well, for example, I was asked in the comments why I still haven't commented on the scandal between Poland and Ukraine. And I already briefly answered why. I shared my thoughts on this, even though we haven't discussed this topic on YouTube at all. So, go to the description, subscribe to Patreon, and become part of this close community. Marco Rubio already met with allies on Tuesday in the United Arab Emirates, after which he went to Kuwait and Bahrain, where he will hold talks with the Gulf Cooperation Council. This is an association of monarchies, which also includes Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Oman. All 6 countries of this council provided logistical support to the American military during the American-Israeli conflict with Iran, which began 4 months ago, and as a result they themselves came under Iranian airstrikes. And now, some of the leaders of the Persian Gulf monarchies are privately expressing disappointment with this very preliminary agreement. The memorandum between the US and Iran could pave the way for normalization of relations between the US and Iran, a predominantly Shia country that most Sunni states in the region see as their main adversary. Iran is seen as the main adversary by regional countries. And now, before their eyes, their main ally, the United States of America, is trying to build relations with their main adversary, Iran. And it should be remembered that the opinion of the sheikhs carries great weight for American politicians. In the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain, American military bases are stationed, which in turn form the foundation of the US security architecture in the Middle East. If any of these countries reconsider their security relationship with Washington, it could significantly affect the US military strategy in the region. And now Marco Rubio needs to reassure regional allies without criticizing Trump's deal with Iran. And as sources from the region state, the specific points of the memorandum between the US and Iran have simply astonished regional leaders. One of the key sources of concern is Iran's ballistic missiles. Throughout the conflict, the Trump administration stated that destroying Iran's missile capabilities and missile program was one of the key goals of the military campaign. This coincided with the interests of the Sunni states of the Persian Gulf, since, unlike the United States of America, all of them are within range of Iran's ballistic missiles and have already been struck. Therefore, all the monarchies were counting on the fact that if Trump started a war, and especially since he publicly declared that he would destroy the missile program, of course they supported this war. However, this topic is not mentioned at all in the memorandum, and Donald Trump himself said that depriving Tehran of such weapons would be unfair. He said, look, if Saudi Arabia, for example, has missiles, then how could he allow Iran not to have such missiles? He says, no, that's not how it works. The question is, then why did you open your mouth and talk about destroying their missile potential? But maybe you shouldn't have made such statements, Donald Trump. Here you go, AM. The document, the Memorandum of Understanding, let me remind you, also provides for the creation of a $300 billion restoration fund for the Islamic Republic of Iran, which raises concerns among neighboring countries. In their opinion, thanks to these investments, Iran may increase, of course, its military potential and strengthen its support for groups like Hezbollah that destabilize the region. Just imagine, they will have rivers of money flowing to them. But they won't invest it in infrastructure, for example. They just won't. History has shown that. For 47 years, they haven't invested a single cent in their infrastructure to provide residents with fresh water. They have problems with electricity, and they haven't invested money in that. They invested money in rockets. Trump now thinks they'll act differently for some reason. And let's be honest, most of the funds that Tehran will receive in the coming weeks will most likely go primarily to strengthening military capabilities, not to supporting the standard of living or the Iranian economy. Moreover, judging by the wording, the deal actually allows for Iran to control the Strait of Hormuz in the future. This raises serious concerns for Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, which depend on this route for exporting oil and gas. And against this backdrop, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, made a statement that could wreck Donald Trump's approval ratings. Netanyahu explained exactly how the war with Iran began in February. The Prime Minister of Israel spoke about the negotiations with Trump on the eve of the war with Iran, stating that essentially he informed the US President that Israel was starting the war, and gave him the choice to either watch or join. Here is a quote from Benjamin Netanyahu. "I just came to him and said, 'We are attacking Iran.' I didn't ask for his permission. I simply explained how we would act. And I was happy that he decided to join." Well, now it's interesting to see how the hardliners and critics of Israel in the American political establishment will behave, those who have long claimed that Netanyahu simply tricked Donald Trump and dragged him into a big war. But now Netanyahu himself has stated this directly. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel with a one-time financial contribution, you can do so with any, even the smallest donation using the links and details in the description of this video. There are a variety of platforms there. Choose whichever is most convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you give. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.